Margaret Maggie Holt adjusted her wool scarf against the biting wind, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp mountain air. After 40 years of nursing, 3 children and 7 grandchildren, she had finally given herself permission to take a proper vacation. The Alpine Ridge Resort promised peace, hot cocoa, and scenic views. Everything her tired bones craved. The snow crunched beneath her boots as she wandered off the main trail, drawn by something she couldn't quite name. Perhaps it was old instinct, the same pull that had guided her through countless emergency room shifts. Whatever it was, it led her to a shallow ravine where something dark contrasted against the pristine white snow. "Oh, you poor thing," Maggie whispered, her nurse's eyes immediately cataloging injuries. The creature was unlike anything she'd seen, roughly the size of a large dog with scales that shimmered an iridescent blue-black, even under the gray sky. Leathery wings, torn and bleeding, lay crumpled against its side. Its breathing came in shallow, labored gasps. Some kind of exotic pet, she thought, kneeling beside it despite the cold seeping through her pants. Probably escaped from someone's cabin. People and their designer animals. The creature's eyes flickered open, large, golden, and filled with an intelligence that made her pause. For a moment, something passed between them. Fear, yes, but also understanding, recognition. Maggie shook her head. 40 years in medicine had taught her that pain and fear looked the same in every living thing. "Easy now," she murmured, the same tone she'd used on countless frightened patients. "I'm not going to hurt you." Vale Rin, crown prince of the Draconian Empire, had faced many indignities in his short life. Court politics, assassination attempts, even the ambush that had shot down his scout ship over this primitive world. But nothing had prepared him for the humiliation of being cooed at like a domestic animal. The human female, elderly by their species' standards, her life force dimming but steady, approached without hesitation. His translator implant had been damaged in the crash, rendering him unable to communicate. His defensive plasma glands were depleted, his wings shredded by the explosion. He was, in the crude human terminology his diplomatic training had covered, completely screwed. Yet as weathered hands gently probed his injuries with surprising competence, Vale Rin found himself relaxing against his better judgment. The human made soft sounds, meaningless without his translator, but the intent was clear. She was helping. "That wing needs setting," Maggie muttered, more to herself than the creature. "And you're probably hypothermic. Can't leave you here." She looked around the empty ravine, then back at the wounded animal. Her children would say she was crazy. Her late husband Tom would have laughed and helped her carry it anyway. "Right then," she said decisively, shrugging off her heavy winter coat. "Let's get you somewhere warm." The hardest part was the climb back up. Maggie wrapped the creature in her coat, grateful it seemed docile despite obvious pain. It weighed more than it looked, and she had to stop 3 times to catch her breath. But nurses learned early that giving up wasn't an option when a life was at stake. Her rental cabin was blessedly close. She kicked the door shut behind her, immediately cranking up the thermostat. The creature's shivering had grown worse, confirming her hypothermia diagnosis. "Okay, let's see what we're working with," Maggie said, carefully unwrapping her coat. In the warm light of the cabin, the creature's scales gleamed like polished obsidian threaded with sapphire. The wings, despite their damage, showed an intricate pattern of membranes supported by elegant bone structure. Beautiful, she thought, before pushing the observation aside. Beauty didn't stop infection or set broken bones. Her nursing kit was woefully inadequate for veterinary work on exotic species, but Maggie had learned to improvise. She cleaned the wounds with antiseptic, wincing in sympathy as the creature's muscles tensed. The wing was the biggest concern, clearly broken in at least 2 places. "This is going to hurt, sweetheart," she warned, though she knew it couldn't understand. "But it'll hurt worse if I don't fix it." Vale Rin bit back a roar as the human set his wing. The pain was excruciating, but he held still, recognizing the necessity. His people had detailed files on humans, violent, territorial, technologically primitive. Yet this one worked with gentle efficiency, her movements speaking of years of practiced skill. She fashioned a splint from wooden spoons and soft cloth, humming tunelessly as she worked. When finished, she sat back with a satisfied nod and retrieved something from her cooling unit. Meat, if his failing senses were correct. "You must be starving," Maggie said, offering a plate of leftover turkey. "It's not fresh, but it's protein." The prince of an empire spanning 12 systems found himself eating processed poultry from a ceramic dish, fed by hand by a grandmother who thought he was someone's lost pet. His tutors would have been appalled. Velrin found it oddly comforting. 3 days passed in the small cabin. Maggie canceled her ski lessons and spa appointments, much to the resort staff's confusion. Instead, she tended to her unusual patient, changing bandages, ensuring it ate, and talking to it constantly. "You know, you remind me of my grandson Tommy," she said on the second evening. Scratching gently behind what she assumed were ears, the creature made a sound suspiciously like a purr. "He tried to hide a broken arm once, didn't want to miss his baseball game. Stubborn thing. Brave, but stubborn." Velrin's translator had partially repaired itself by the third day, though he kept this development to himself. The human stories were fascinating. Tales of healing, of family, of a species that cared for its wounded rather than abandoning them as weakness. When his distress beacon finally attracted a rescue team, Velrin found himself reluctant to leave. The Draconian ship appeared in the night sky, cloaked but visible to his enhanced vision. His guards would be frantic, the Empire's enemies emboldened by his disappearance. He looked at Maggie, sleeping peacefully in her chair beside his makeshift bed, a blanket tucked around her shoulders. She had risked exposure, exhaustion, even hypothermia herself, for a creature she believed to be a simple animal. Humans, he realized, were far more dangerous than any intelligence report suggested, not because of their weapons or their territorial nature, but because of this inexplicable tendency to help, to heal, to care for the wounded and lost. As he slipped out into the night, fully healed by the medical beam from above, Velrin made a decision. When he returned to the Empire, he would propose a formal alliance with Earth. Any species capable of such compassion deserved the full protection and friendship of the Draconian people. Behind him, Maggie stirred, noticed the empty bed, and smiled. "Hope you found your way home, sweetheart," she murmured. Pulling the blanket tighter, she never noticed the small, perfect dragon scale left on her pillow, iridescent, priceless and worth more than the entire ski resort. She never knew that the lost pet she'd rescued was royalty, or that her kindness had just changed the fate of 2 civilizations. She only knew that she'd done what nurses do, helped something in pain, and sometimes that's enough to change the universe.